You didn't click this by accident. Something began shifting the moment you did. And no, this isn't a metaphor. The energy around you is already responding. You've just stumbled upon a secret, one that's been hidden from humanity for centuries. I'm not here for theatrics. This is real. There's an ancient technique, once guarded by Thoth himself, that unlocks your inner sight. When used correctly, it allows you to perceive realities others can't even imagine. But this power isn't without risk. If you activate it before you're ready, you could open doors that won't easily shut. To show you I'm not making this up, I'll give you the first activation right now. Focus. Do you feel it? That subtle pressure between your eyebrows? That's your third eye, beginning to awaken. You don't have to believe in it, just feel it. But hold on, that's not all, because there's a block that was placed on you from the moment you were born. And before you activate the technique, you need to break that invisible prison. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you now. The mind, when purified from the illusion of the senses, sees not with the eyes, but with the inner light. And in that light, all is revealed as it always was. Now that you've started to awaken, it's time to face the question no one wants to ask. Who blinded you? Who installed the lenses that distort the way you see reality? Because it wasn't you. This was done long before you were born. And no, it's not a theory, it's a structure, a vibrational structure that was meticulously built to limit your perception to the bare minimum needed for you to function without realizing you're being controlled. Since the first organized civilizations, certain groups, priests, kings, empires, institutions, and later more modern systems understood a powerful truth. Whoever controls vision controls the world. But we're not talking about eyesight, we're talking about attention, about what your mind is conditioned to accept as real. If you grow up believing that only what can be seen, measured and touched exists, you automatically exclude 90% of what is truly happening around you. And that's where the veil comes in. The veil is not a poetic metaphor. It's a frequency, a dense vibrational layer that acts as a filter between you and expanded reality. You look, but you don't see. You listen, but you don't understand. You feel, but you can't name what you're feeling. It disconnects you from the invisible, keeps you trapped on the surface. And the cruelest part, it's invisible precisely because it was designed to seem natural. This veil is fed daily by stimuli that hijack your attention. News that keeps you afraid. Social media that bombards you with endless images and opinions. Situations that drain your emotional energy. Wake up, rush, stress, work, consume, sleep, and repeat. The routine was designed so you wouldn't have time to stop and ask, what's behind all this? Most people live inside a perceptual dome. They believe they're free, but they only see the visible part of the hologram. The problem is that what truly shapes your life, your patterns, your encounters, your subtle sensations, is happening in the invisible, and the veil was placed there specifically to prevent you from accessing that dimension. But why do this? Because a fragmented mind is easy to manipulate. A distracted mind accepts any ready-made truth. An emotionally unstable mind can be led by fear and guilt. And that's convenient because a distracted population doesn't question, doesn't challenge. It just consumes, works, and obeys. The forgotten portal where your inner vision was always waiting and you ignored it. The portal to inner vision is not found in temples, doctrines, complex formulas, or out-of-body experiences. It exists in the space between two thoughts. Yes, right there in the microsecond when the mind stops chasing the next idea. A place where there are no names, no judgments, no voices, only presence. Hermes called this the neutral point. The wise one said, "This is the moment when the divine whispers." Modern science unknowingly confirms it when studying the brain state between alpha and theta waves, that threshold between wakefulness and sleep, where access to the unconscious opens like a natural portal. The problem is, we've been conditioned to fear mental silence when it appears. Most people rush to fill it. They turn on music, open a new tab on their phone, change the subject as if emptiness were dangerous. But what you're looking for lives in that emptiness. It's in that gap that inner vision awakens, not because you force it, but because you finally stop getting in the way. You've been in this state many times before, falling asleep when your mind slows down, waking up from a lucid dream where everything seemed more real than physical reality, when you sense something is going to happen, and it does. But those moments were treated as exceptions when in fact they are clues. Traces left by your deeper consciousness trying to remind you that there is another way of seeing. A vision without eyes, a hearing without ears, a presence that perceives without effort. But no one taught you how to stay there. No one told you that this space between thoughts is accessible at any moment, because that brings autonomy, and autonomy breaks the system. A human being who learns to consciously enter this neutral point no longer depends on gurus, systems, or external authorities to perceive the truth. They feel, they see, they recognize, and that is dangerous to those who profit from your distraction. But the neutral point is not just a brain state, it is a vibrational field that changes everything around you. When you enter this space, your energy field restructures. Your body enters coherence, intuition lights up, and reality begins to respond differently. You no longer react with the same impulse. You no longer get lost in the same patterns, because now there is awareness between stimulus and response. A space, a portal. This portal isn't visual. You won't see it with your physical eyes, but you'll recognize it through subtle sensations, a lightness in the forehead, a pause in time, a silent expansion that doesn't need an explanation. Some people describe it as if the air around them becomes denser, more alive. Others report a sudden drop in thought speed, like the world slowing down. Everyone feels it differently, but they all recognize the same phenomenon. Consciousness leaving the surface and diving into what's real. And here lies one of humanity's greatest forgotten secrets. You don't need to leave your body, travel to the Himalayas, or spend years in meditation to access this state. You just need to stop, but truly stop. Stop trying, stop searching, stop filling, and simply be. It sounds easy, but it's a huge challenge for a mind addicted to movement. But accessing this state is only the beginning. For this vision to become part of your everyday life, not just a rare glimpse, you need something more solid, an inner foundation, a sacred space built not with stones, but with vibration. And that's where what the ancients called the inner temple comes in. Because without this temple, your vision fades like a dream upon waking. And now that you've seen the portal, it's time to learn how to build the sacred space that will keep this vision alive. But don't expect to find this temple in stone walls, ancient monuments, or mystical landscapes. The true temple was never external. It has always been where few dare to look, in the deepest core of your presence. This temple isn't made of symbols, it's made of silence. It doesn't need elaborate rituals, lit candles, or chants in another language. It's built in the way you breathe, in how you observe, in the space you create between one thought and another. It's invisible to the eyes, but tangible to consciousness, and your body already knows this. It just needs permission to remember. Every time you close your eyes and sincerely dive into your own center, an invisible brick is placed. But not an ordinary brick. It's made of presence, of pure intention, of rested attention. And the more you return to this space, the more solid it becomes. The temple begins to take shape as an internal field of clarity. A space where the world outside still exists, but no longer dominates you. And this is where true awakening begins to gain consistency. This temple is the meeting point between perception and non-judgment. Within it, you don't try to understand, don't try to fix, don't try to find answers. You simply allow everything to be as it is. Because inner vision doesn't come from urgency. It blooms when you hold calm with steadiness. And this doesn't happen through effort. It happens when you choose to stop running from yourself, to stop searching outside for what already pulses within. You've probably noticed that the outside world is built to pull you away from this space. Constantly, your attention is pulled outward. Notifications, opinions, noise, urgency, all of it fragments your presence, and a fragmented presence cannot hold vision. That's why building this temple is an act of vibrational resistance. It's choosing to return to yourself even when everything pushes you away. And the more you do this, the more sensitive your perception becomes. Not in the sense of fragility, but in the sense of depth. This is where the practice begins, and it doesn't depend on the perfect setting. You can start now, wherever you are. Close your eyes for a moment. Don't try to empty your mind. That's a common mistake. Just observe. Let the thoughts come, but don't cling to any of them. Feel your breath happening on its own. Notice how the air flows in and out without asking permission. And now bring your attention to the center of your chest as if you just want to hear what the silence is trying to say. In that moment, something begins to shift. You're no longer lost in time, no longer projecting yourself into the past or future. You are here. And here is the foundation of the temple. Your deep breath anchors the moment. Your effortless observation holds the space. And in this space, the invisible begins to reveal itself subtly but unmistakably. Sometimes it's a soft warmth, other times a gentle vibration. And in certain moments, it's simply a peace you can't explain. And you don't need to. And the most beautiful part is that no one can build this temple for you. It can't be borrowed or copied. It is born from your willingness to sit with yourself, to let time slow down, to accept that the extraordinary lives in simplicity. Each time you surrender to this inner space with sincerity, something aligns, something vibrates, something whispers, and that whisper is the first sign that the vision is about to open. Now that the temple has been activated, it's time to cross the first gate, and it opens with a practice as simple as it is powerful. The ritual of the 7 breaths. The ritual of the 7 breaths. The key that unlocks your third eye. At first glance, it may seem like just a breathing exercise, but it's not. This practice is a vibrational key, a subtle code that, when done with real presence, begins to dissolve the energetic blockages that keep your perception limited. Each breath is an unlocking, a silent command that clears, aligns, and expands. This ritual doesn't need a setting. It doesn't require background music or a specific emotional state. It only asks for one thing: surrender. A surrender that doesn't come from force, but from listening. Because what you're going to feel in the next few minutes won't come from your logical mind. It will come from the energetic body you inhabit, the one science still can't measure, but the ancients knew how to read perfectly. So, close your eyes, sit with your spine upright but relaxed, let your feet touch the ground or floor, rest your hands wherever is most comfortable, and now breathe deeply through your nose. That's the first breath. Inhale with intention, not just as someone filling their lungs, but as someone inviting consciousness in. Hold the air for a brief moment, feel it, and exhale slowly. Feel how, along with the air, a layer of tension is leaving, as if your body were exhaling years of accumulated noise. The second breath now with more depth. Inhale until your abdomen expands. Let this breath loosen the tightness in your chest. As you exhale, notice if something in you is already beginning to slow down. It's as if you're creating space inside, as if your mind is starting to realize it can relax. Third breath. This time, imagine the air entering through an invisible door in the center of your forehead between your eyebrows. Don't force the visualization, just set the intention. As you inhale, guide that energy to the top of your head. As you exhale, let it flow down to the heart like a circuit. This simple gesture starts to activate a rarely used area, the region of subtle perception. The fourth breath. Now you're no longer just breathing, you're aligning centers. As you inhale, feel as if you're clearing your mind. As you exhale, release everything that no longer needs to be carried. Useless memories, unconscious tension, repetitive thoughts. This isn't about controlling the mind, it's about letting it empty itself. Fifth breath. This is where many people start to feel a slight tingling between the eyebrows, sometimes a soft pressure, as if a small light were turning on in that region. That's the sign. The point of inner vision is responding. This sensation is not imaginary. It arises because your attention combined with the breath is activating a silent gland, the pineal. And even if you don't understand how, it knows exactly what to do. The sixth breath is deep, not just in the body, it's a dive. As you inhale, imagine you're passing through an invisible layer as if you're stepping outside of time. Feel the pause, the expansion. As you exhale, let your body settle into this new state, a state where time slows down and perception deepens. This is where you begin to move away from breath now with more depth. Inhale until your abdomen expands. Let this breath loosen the tightness in your chest. As you exhale, notice if something in you is already beginning to slow down. It's as if you're creating space inside, as if your mind is starting to realize it can relax. Third breath. This time, imagine the air entering through an invisible door in the center of your forehead between your eyebrows. Don't force the visualization, just set the intention. As you inhale, guide that energy to the top of your head. As you exhale, let it flow down to the heart like a circuit. This simple gesture starts to activate a rarely used area, the region of subtle perception. The fourth breath. Now you're no longer just breathing, you're aligning centers. As you inhale, feel as if you're clearing your mind. As you exhale, release everything that no longer needs to be carried. Useless memories, unconscious tension, repetitive thoughts. This isn't about controlling the mind, it's about letting it empty itself. Fifth breath. This is where many people start to feel a slight tingling between the eyebrows, sometimes a soft pressure as if a small light were turning on in that region. That's the sign. The point of inner vision is responding. This sensation is not imaginary. It arises because your attention combined with the breath is activating a silent gland, the pineal. And even if you don't understand how, it knows exactly what to do. The sixth breath is deep, not just in the body. It's a dive. As you inhale, imagine you're passing through an invisible layer as if you're stepping outside of time. Feel the pause, the expansion. As you exhale, let your body settle into this new state, a state where time slows down and perception deepens. This is where you begin to move away from the surface. Seventh and final breath. Don't rush. Inhale with reverence, like someone who knows they're about to cross an inner threshold. And as you exhale, let everything go. Let go of expectation. Let go of effort. Let go of control. And just notice, the body relaxes, the mind quiets, and between your eyebrows something pulses, vibrates, a subtle energy as if the center of your forehead were about to open. This practice is an entry, a portal that responds to sincere repetition. The more you return to it, the easier it becomes to enter that state, but not as an empty habit. rather as a conscious act of reconnection, because over time the body learns, the mind learns, your frequency adapts, and that space stops being a visit. It becomes home. But this is just the beginning. There comes a moment when the mind stops completely, and then you see, not with physical eyes, not with imagination. You see with something that's always been there, but that you never knew how to name. And this is where we reach the most delicate and at the same time most transformative point of this journey, the blind spot of consciousness. This point is not located anywhere your logic can reach. It's too subtle to describe, yet so real that once accessed it forever changes the way you perceive everything around you. It's a space where the mind is no longer trying to interpret, where control no longer makes sense, where silence stops being absence and becomes absolute presence. The ancients knew this. They called this state the threshold. A territory where you are no longer trapped in thought but haven't fully entered the void either. It's a crack, a silent fold between the known and the unnameable. That's why they called it the blind spot. Not because it doesn't exist, but because it can't be looked at directly. The more you try to see it with effort, the more it slips away. But when you surrender, it reveals itself. This point isn't activated by will. It appears when will becomes silent, when the body is awake, but the mind is no longer trying to get anywhere. It's a state where you're not doing anything, yet everything is happening. And suddenly, images emerge, sensations appear. Information that didn't come from memory or logic begins to surface with clarity. You might feel as if a part of you is looking inward, like a camera turned on somewhere between the eyebrows and the heart. Sometimes it comes in flashes, other times in full visions. Some people describe it as watching an inner movie. Others feel an expansion that words cannot describe. But everyone knows it wasn't imagined. It was received. But be aware this blind spot is sensitive. It doesn't like noise or haste. It pulls back when you try to catch it with anxiety. That's why accessing it requires care. It requires presence. And above all, it requires humility. Because what begins to be revealed in that space goes beyond what your mind is used to processing. And not everything will come the way you want. Sometimes what appears there are forgotten memories, old emotions, truths you've avoided. And that's why many people run from this point without even realizing it. But now that the portal is open and you've started to see without looking, a new challenge appears. Because the invisible also has its traps. Not everything you see in this field is true. Not everything you feel comes from your essence. That's why the masters always said, whoever accesses the invisible must learn how to navigate. Now that the portal is open, you need to know how to navigate the invisible worlds without getting lost. That's the next step, the forbidden technique. Why only the prepared can use it. The awakening of inner vision doesn't come with a manual. It opens doors, but it also throws windows wide open. And not everything that appears there is true. Not every image is a revelation. Not every vibration is wisdom. In this subtle territory, discernment isn't a luxury. It's a tool for spiritual survival. The first risk is fascination. When inner vision starts to manifest, it's common to be enchanted by the images that appear. Symbols, unfamiliar faces, landscapes that don't exist in this realm, intense sensations of belonging. Everything feels magical. But here's the warning. The subtle realm also has its illusions, and they're much more seductive than those of the physical world because they speak directly to your longing for meaning. And that's exactly what can trap you. The ancient masters always warn those who enter the invisible without an anchor get lost because the mind, when overly sensitized, can start to project what it wants to see. And then what was perception turns into fantasy. What was intuition turns into confusion. That's why the first lesson for those who navigate between worlds is never mistake intensity for truth. The energy may be strong, but that doesn't mean it's true in essence. So how do you discern? You need two pillars: mental anchoring and energetic grounding. And these don't come from the rational mind, they come from the body. Because the body is the bridge between the visible and the invisible. If you want to maintain clarity during a vision, bring your attention back to the base of your body. Feel your feet, your hands, your lower breath. Bring awareness to the now. This keeps you from being swept away by mental images. The practice is simple but powerful. Every time something appears, silently ask yourself, am I present or am I projecting? That question is a sword. It cuts through the noise. Another essential tool is the post-vision silence after any intense vibrational experience. Don't rush to interpret. Wait. The ego loves to build stories based on incomplete sensations. If you rush to name what you saw, you lose the essence. Real vision keeps vibrating even after the experience ends. If it's true, it doesn't fade. It becomes part of your frequency. And remember, not every being, not every image, not every presence that shows up in the invisible is there to guide you. Some are there to test you, to measure your steadiness, to try to distract you with promises or illusions. That's why neutrality is your protection. Don't react with fear or excitement. Stay observant. The true navigator of the invisible is not impressed. They observe, feel, filter, give thanks, and move on. As your vision becomes clearer, you'll start to notice layers in this new field. Some are just mental noise in symbolic form. Others are collective emotional fields that you pass through without realizing. But there are also those spaces where truth pulses with precision, and those don't shout, they whisper, and you can only hear them when you are fully anchored in yourself. This navigation is what transforms inner vision into wisdom, and that's why Thoth only taught it to those who were ready. Because contrary to what many believe, the danger isn't in not seeing. The real risk is seeing too much and not knowing what to do with what you saw. And this is where we reveal something that until now has remained hidden. There is a technique that was guarded with extreme care, not because it was secret in the usual sense, but because it requires something rare, vibrational maturity. This technique cannot be given to someone who seeks power. It can only be activated by someone who has learned how to be silent. The forbidden technique begins where all others end. It's not visible. It has no form. It cannot be precisely explained because it's not something you do. It's something you become. And that's why it's so unsettling, because it dismantles. It reorganizes everything you believe about perception, identity, and reality. It's not about a practice. It's about a voluntary collapse of the inner structure, an act of surrender that doesn't come from effort, but from total letting go. It's like crossing a threshold without bringing the self along. That's why Thoth didn't teach it directly. He only prepared because when the field is ready, the technique activates on its own. It doesn't respond to desire, but to vibration, and that vibration can only be reached when the being has stopped seeking. If you feel like you're already seeing more clearly, if the invisible no longer frightens you, but also no longer fascinates you, maybe your field is ready. But even so, there is something essential that must come before full integration. Because the awakening of vision without conscious application becomes just another random experience, and still the most important part is missing. How to integrate this into your daily life without losing your balance? That's what comes next. The true awakening. How to use your inner vision to rewrite your reality. The real challenge is to live from this vision in your routine, in traffic, during superficial conversations, in the face of intense emotions, in the middle of chaos. The true test doesn't happen in complete silence, but when the world pushes you away from yourself and you choose to remain whole. Integration doesn't require isolation. On the contrary, it happens in the middle of real life. While you're talking to someone, while you're cooking, while hearing a critique, while receiving unexpected news, it's in these ordinary moments that your practice reveals whether it's truly authentic or not. If your inner vision depends on rituals, ideal conditions, or complete silence to exist, then it's not yet integrated, it's still conditioned. But when you begin to hold that vision, even in the noise, something shifts. The noise is still there, but it no longer pulls you in. People keep talking, but you listen differently. Triggers arise, but you respond with presence. The difference isn't outside, it's inside. You start to notice there's a space between the stimulus and the response, and in that space lives your freedom. True inner vision is the one that no longer needs to hide from practical life. So, how do you do that? With simple yet living practices. The first is observation without judgment. Throughout the day, choose a few moments to just observe the environment, your thoughts, the people around you. Observe like a scientist seeing something for the first time without interpreting, without comparing. This keeps the field of vision open and active. Another powerful practice is the conscious pause. Whenever you feel yourself disconnecting from yourself, stop for 5 seconds. Breathe. Come back to the center of your chest. This rebuilds your presence, and little by little, that pause becomes second nature. The mind begins to understand it no longer needs to react automatically, that it can breathe before responding. You can also use subtle anchors, a touch to the chest, a glance at the sky, a word in your mind. Choose a gesture that reminds you of the temple, a gesture that silently says, "I'm here." This gesture will be your bridge when everything seems to collapse. Living from inner vision doesn't mean becoming special. It means becoming whole, acting with presence, speaking with clarity, loving with depth, being silent with intention, and above all, living with truth. This is not perfection. This is alignment. And here lies the final secret. The more you live in this frequency, the less effort is needed. You stop searching because you realize you already are. You stop defending yourself because you know who you are. You stop running because you are home, even in the middle of the world. Now that you've seen what others don't, your journey is only just beginning. The next step, live like someone who has finally seen everything. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is already awakening. So, do this. Write in the comments, "My inner vision has awakened." So, I know who really felt this vibrational activation happening right now. Your message might be the sign someone else needed to read to remember who they are. Oh, and if you'd like to help this channel reach more people and spread this wisdom out into the world, there's a link in the first pinned comment where you can contribute directly. Every bit of help strengthens this mission. Thank you for walking this path together. And don't leave just yet, because I've prepared a special video to show you the next step in this journey. Just click on the video that's showing on your screen now. I'll meet you there so we can continue this awakening together.